Welcome to another episode of Tea with Natalie, where I get a cup of tea and I sit down and I share with you what I'm thinking about and what I'd love for you to be thinking about this week. And if you're watching on YouTube, here's my very hot cup of tea. It's Bengali tea today that a friend introduced me to that I'm absolutely loving, especially now that it's getting chillier. I'm really enjoying recording these solo, shorter episodes. Let me know if you're enjoying them. Shoot me an email, natalie@happier.com, Natalie@happier.com. Let me know what's landing with you, what's resonating, what other topics you'd love for me to talk about. This episode is for you. What I want to talk about today is how we find different ways, sometimes really sneaky, to discount our worth and to minimize ourselves and our abilities and our accomplishments. And I'm going to start by telling you a story that I was trying to think. I don't think I've told publicly, actually. I'm pretty sure I haven't. Um, Actually, I think Avi, my husband, may be the only one who knows the full story. So let me share it with you. So I went to college at Wesleyan University. It's actually where my husband Avi and I met. And our daughter Mia is a junior there. So Wesleyan family all the way. And at Wesleyan, we don't have valedictorians, but what we do have is if you get high honors in your major, each department nominates one person to then compete for what's called university honors. And to compete for university honors, you have to give a talk, a presentation on a particular topic. And it's usually like big topics, like what do you think the future of society is in 100 years, like big topics. And you have to give this presentation to a group that consists of the head of each of the departments. And so the idea is that not only do you have high honors and high competence in your major, if you can do this and then they question you, then a couple students a year get university honors to kind of show that you have mastery to some degree of multiple disciplines. So long story short, I majored in what's called the College of Social Studies. I think it's a combination of government economics and philosophy. This kind of funky major. And I got high honors and I was nominated to compete for university honors. And I did. I was so nerve-wracked as I was preparing. It was nuts. I was really intimidated. The one good thing to know at this part of the story is that so it's a senior year of college. By this point, I had been in the country. I came to the US with my parents as refugees when I was in eighth grade. So I'd been in the country for about 8 years and still very much considered myself a refugee. Actually, I still very much consider myself a refugee, even though it's 35 years. But it was a very fresh experience. And so I went on, I read all kinds of books and I prepped and I thought what I was going to talk about. And I went to do my presentation for university honors. And I don't remember much from it other than I sweat so much. And I am not someone who sweats. Like it's just not, I don't sweat a lot, even if it's like super hot. But I was wearing this white shirt. I think I got it at the Gap and like a white collared shirt. And I just remember it was completely soaked. In fact, when I came out, Avi, who was my boyfriend, who's now my husband, was there waiting for me and he hugged me. And I remember even his reaction, like I was just complete water all over me. So to end the suspense, I was one of the two people that got university honors in my year. And it was a huge deal for many reasons, but especially because it felt like just a huge achievement, not just for me, but for me and my parents. I remember the moment I called my mom from an actual phone in my room. And I said, Mom, I got it. And she said, oh my God. Okay. I have to hang up. I have to tell Papa. It was a huge moment of arrival for all of us. And it was a really, really, really special experience. And I got to, walk on the graduation ceremony first, and they announced my name first and all kinds of wonderful things. Why am I telling you this? Not to just tell you about something awesome I've done, but I'm telling you this because that's actually not the interesting part of the story. The interesting part of the story is how quickly it took me to dismiss the value of my accomplishment. Because within days, the story that I began to tell myself and believe is that I got university honors. They gave me university honors because they felt bad for me as a refugee. Okay, so just I want you to internalize this, because what I hope is happening as I'm telling you this story is it's illuminating one or more of the stories that you've been telling yourself to diminish your value, your achievements, and your abilities. So think about that. I worked my butt off on my thesis, which was about actually the benefit of the Russian mafia for the stability of the collapsed Russian economy. I mean, that's a whole other story. So I worked really hard on it. And a bunch of professors read it, really smart, brilliant professors, and they chose to give me high honors in my major. And then a bunch of really smart professors decided that of all the people in my major who got high honors, I was the one they wanted to nominate for university honors, because they thought I had a shot, which would mean a lot to the major. And then I did all this work and I prepped for university honors and I did this great job. And all these professors who were there were many, I don't know, 12, they all voted and they thought I was worthy of this huge award. And yet the story that I very quickly made up is that this is because they felt bad for me as a refugee. And I want to tell you that it's taken me, it wasn't until very recently that I've really become aware that this is how I've diminished my, not just that achievement, but how often throughout my life and career, I created these stories in my head. For about 15 years, everything was about refugee. So after college, I went to work for McKinsey, and this is 1998. McKinsey at the time was it was like the consulting gig you could get in New York City. And I remember I felt when I got the job, I felt, oh my God, I can't believe I got it. McKinsey, by the way, did not recruit anyone from Wesleyan for like the previous 20 years. They only focused on Ivies at the time. And I wasn't at an Ivy League university, even though Wesleyan's amazing. But I had all this kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe I got it. And then I remember thinking like, oh, I bet they gave it to me because like they felt bad that I was a refugee. I hope this is sounding ridiculous to you, because I'm trying to like help you to look within your stories and start to notice some of the stories that you tell yourself to minimize your accomplishments and your abilities, that hopefully when you shine the light of awareness on them, start to sound ridiculous to you. Because when I just said this to you, it sounds ridiculous. An incredibly prestigious, competitive job was given to me because they felt bad for me as a refugee. That's ridiculous. But do you know how often I've thought that? And here's the thing. We all, well, I don't know if all, but I haven't yet met a person in my life or through my work or mentorship with leaders where they don't do this, where they, in some way, we seem to all have this uncanny ability to create these stories that minimize our worth, that put it, oh, I got this job, but I think I got lucky. Or, a version of the imposter syndrome that I hear so often from the women executives I work with is, well, yeah, I got this promotion, but they shouldn't have given it to me. I'm not as good as they think I am, right? Or, just some other version of, again, I want you to think within yourself, what are the stories you are telling yourself and you have been telling yourself about why you've achieved certain things you've done, or why you're great at certain things or your skills? What are the stories that minimize your inherent abilities and gifts and skills and hard work and your worth? Because here's the thing, until we are able to become aware of them and really truly see them, not judge them, right? I don't judge myself for believing these stories about university honors or McKinsey or a bunch of other things that I've achieved that I've sort of, I wouldn't say I've kind of dismissed, but I made sure that it didn't feel that great to me because, oh, it was because I was X or I got lucky or I was a refugee. But until you can really witness and see them without judgment, I don't judge myself. I didn't know better. But until you can really see these stories and acknowledge them, you can't even begin to dismantle the assumptions they're based on. You can't begin to unravel them and emerge through them so that you can fully acknowledge your true skills, your true abilities, and your true worth. And until you can truly acknowledge your true abilities and your true worth and your true unique gifts, you can't ever grow into the future self that you want to become. Because we can only imagine something, or we can only rise to the place that we believe we deserve or we're worthy of. And so and I don't, I've been really working on both seeing these beliefs in myself of when I've been diminishing my worth and my abilities and my achievements and my hard work. And in doing that, I've also seen how continuing to believe those stories has limited my ability to grow, my ability to expand my impact, my ability to grow my business, my ability to impact more people in meaningful ways. And so this is what I'd love for you to marinate on, to journal about, to have a cup of tea as I am and to think about on a walk. What are what are the stories that you've been believing and telling yourself that have diminished or are diminishing your abilities, your true worth, your unique gifts? I have the gift of working with a lot of people, both through my keynotes or workshops or my mentorship work. And I cannot tell you how many people, when I ask them, tell me about your unique gifts, they say, I don't have any unique gifts, Natalie. I don't have any. And the thing is, of course you do. Every single one of us does. And when people ask me, like, this question I've thought about a lot, like, what is the purpose of life? I think the whole purpose of life is to uncover your unique gifts and abilities, and then to find ways to express them and share them in ways that bring you joy. And that's how we can be in the greatest service of this lifetime and of everyone we interact with. So, of course, we all have unique gifts and abilities. But if you're one of those people, if thinking about that question makes you uncomfortable, if you've gotten so used to telling yourself the story of, I don't have any unique gifts and abilities, or, well, the only reason I got that job is, well, I got lucky, or it was a one-off, or it was because the people who gave me that job, they made a mistake, right? Again, it's a version of the imposter syndrome. Oh, they made a mistake. I'm not as good as they think they are. I want you to really dig into that. And again, the first step is to really witness and see these stories. And then the second part of the work, and this is a lot of the work, around like reinventing this mindset, reinventing these stories, that I love to do with people I work with. The second part is to look at these stories and ask yourself, what are the facts that make this story true? So, for example, let's take my university honor story or my getting the McKinsey job story. Not a single time, and I talked to many of the professors that were part of the committee that awarded me the award. I worked at McKinsey for a while, obviously, after I got the job and I got to interact with people. Not one time did I ever hear someone refer to me as a refugee in any context. And also never, like, had I ever heard anyone refer to other people like, oh, he's an immigrant, let's give him a break in giving him this job. Like, I have no facts to support these stories. I have no facts. They're not based in fact. They're based in a certain lack of self-worth. And again, I don't say this with judgment. I was reading recently that we established most of our kind of concept of self-worth by the age we're 6 or 7. And so it's not my fault. It is not your fault. It's actually not your parents' fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's often how we're socialized, and the seemingly like innocent interactions, right? Like, you are working on a drawing in kindergarten and you want your teacher to love it, and your teacher doesn't love it or doesn't say something wonderful about it. And so you start to think like, oh, my drawing is not good enough, therefore I am not good enough, right? So we develop these incredibly unhelpful belief patterns. Often we pick them up. And so the work then, the ability we now have as adults is to really examine those beliefs and, as I like to say, call their bullshit, right? Call their bullshit. Because I have no facts to support the story that I was only given university honors because I was a refugee. I have zero. But the other piece that I love to do is look for facts what are the facts you have to support that story? And then I want you to look for facts that support the opposite story, right? So what is the opposite story? The opposite story is that I worked really hard and I was a highly capable student and highly intelligent. And I was always interested in multiple disciplines and always studying multiple disciplines. And therefore, I really had this multidisciplinary perspective and really deserved to get this award. So that's the other story. Notice in my voice how powerful that is. So once you kind of make this opposite story, what are the facts? Are there any facts, if you look back in your life, that support the opposite stories? I can give you a bajillion facts that support the opposite story. The grades I got throughout university, the comments I got from professors, the way that just I was able to perform in my classes, right? I can give you tons of facts that support the opposite story. And this is how we begin to do the inner work to break through some of these belief patterns that we've gotten so used to, we may not even notice them, that we use to minimize our worth and minimize our gifts and minimize our self-concept. And when you do this work, I don't expect it to be easy. It is not, because the beliefs are strong. They're so strong, they feel like it's your identity. And our brain loves kind of what it knows, so wants to hang on. But when you begin to do this work, you already feel the benefit, because I love to use this analogy. If you walk into a dark room and you turn on the lights, you see where everything in the room is. And even if you turn the lights off 30 seconds later, you still kind of remember where the chair was, where the bookcase was. So once you can witness, you can really see, you can bring your awareness to these stories, you can't unsee them. And the next time you start telling that story, it's no longer on autopilot. It's now, oh, there I go telling this unhelpful, false story to minimize what I feel I deserve, to minimize my worth, to minimize how I think of myself. And then you can ask yourself, when you notice that, you can ask yourself this question, which I love to ask. How does telling myself the story help me become the person I want to be? How does telling myself the story that I got university honors because they felt bad for me as a refugee, how does it help me become the person I want to be, to have the greatest, deepest impact on my audiences, to have the greatest, deepest impact on the clients I work with, to be the most amazing mama and wife and daughter and friend. How does believing that story help me? It doesn't. It is a constricting, deflating story. And asking yourself that again, when you notice these stories, asking yourself this question: how does continuing to tell the story, how does continuing to tell the story help me become the person I want to be? It's a really powerful question, because what happens for me, I'll just share it with you, and people I've worked with and introduced this to tell me the same. It's like one of those like big bars that comes down, like when the train is coming and this bar thing comes down and blocks the traffic, or like when you're driving into a big commercial garage, right? It's like this thing comes down and it's like the story is not helping me become who I want to be. And then you ask, what would be a more fueling story? And that's where, you do this work of choosing the opposite, something that is fueling, that is actually true, after you've done that work of looking for facts that support the limiting story and then looking for facts that support the opposite. So I'd love for you to marinate on this. I'd love for you to do some of these practices I mentioned. And ultimately, the most important first step is to become aware, to take these stories off of autopilot and become aware of the fact that they're just stories, that it's not your fault that you've been telling them. Often we're socialized into them, or we pick up cues as kids and then we kind of make a story out of them. Or maybe a couple things happen throughout your life and our brain loves patterns. So it picks a couple data points and it makes a story. And so the first really powerful step is to become aware that these are just stories. They're not facts. They're often based on very incorrect assumptions and incomplete assumptions. And once you have that awareness, to ask yourself this question: does believing the story help me to become the person I want to be? And if the answer is no, which I know it is, what is a more empowering, true, fueling narrative that you want to shift into? I hope this lands with you. I hope it, as I say, I love to lovingly agitate people to grow into the awesome humans they want to become. So I hope there's some loving agitation there for you. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Natalie@happier.com. Let me know. Let me know how you're practicing this, where you're stuck, what other topics you'd like for me to cover. Please rate and review this podcast on your favorite platform if you're enjoying it. It'll help other awesome humans discover it. And as always, thank you for being. Thank you for sharing some of your heart and mind and time with me. And I will see you, if you're watching, and be in your ear for our next episode. Take care.